called Hope. And it's, it's 4 lines. And Emily says, hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. At all. So that's Sarah Emily Good. Of her pieces too. One is, I think they're both love poems in different ways. This particular first poem is a poem for Ms. Fannie Lou Hamer. And I won't read the whole poem, I'm just going to read the last part of it. But it's an homage and a love poem to her and to all the warrior women, I think. So, June used to travel down south, of course, and worked with Miss Fannie Lou and so forth. So it's one of those times where she had been down Montgomery. So, humble as a woman anywhere, I remember finding you inside the laundromat in Ruleville. Lion spine relaxed. Hell, what's the point to courage when you're washing clothes? But that took courage, just to sit there, target to the killers looking for your singing face, perspiry through the rinse and the spin. But later, you stood mighty in the door on James Street, loud calling, all caps, bullets or no bullets, the food is cooked and getting cold. We are a family tremulous but fortified by turnips and okra and hand-picked like the lilies, filled to the very living, full, one solid gospel, sanctified, one gospel, peace, one full black lily, luminescent in a homemade field of love. Woo! Wild nights. Were I with thee, wild nights should be our luxury. Futile the winds to a heart in port, done with the compass, done with the chart. Rowing in Eden, the sea. Might I but moor tonight in thee.
Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Dion. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this moment, to this time of celebrating, commemorating, acknowledging the incredibly beautiful and powerful life of Achebe Betty Powell. I'm not sure how Tina sang that song, given how broken her heart is. And as you are brokenhearted, so also is her middle family. So we open our hearts to yours, to feel all the feels. I imagine we will giggle about Achebe today. I imagine we will cry more tears about Achebe today. I imagine that we will learn things we didn't know about Achebe today from the people who know her the best. We give particular love to her family, to her partner, to the friendships that have lasted for a lifetime. And acknowledge in this room so many people who have cared for her with so much love. And on behalf of all of us, I say thank you to all of us. Achebe's friends and family have put together this really beautiful memorial today. And so I invite you to be your full self here, just as you are as you come in this place. If you're online, welcome. Please feel free to not hold anything in, so that this room is an altar to Achebe Betty Powell. Because you're here. Because we're here. Because she who believed deeply in the permanence of the divine spirit is also here. Amen. And Ashe.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to read the 23rd Psalm. And I know some of you hold that scripture in your heart. So if you'd like to say it with me, whatever version you know, whatever language you know, we'll say it together. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. She makes me lie down in green pastures. She leads me beside still waters. She restores my soul. She leads me in right paths for her name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever and ever. Amen.
Hear now a word from the Gospel of John. Jesus said, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my mother's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you to go and prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you as myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. And you know that the way to the place that I am going. But Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? And Jesus said to Thomas, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to my mother except through me. If you know me, you will also know her. From now on, you do know her and have seen her. The word of God for the people of God.
Friends, we're going to sing one verse of Great is Thy Faithfulness. That is another text that we all may know from different ways, and there we have it on the screen. I'm so excited for my team. I was like, we're about to line out this hymn up in here. Old Black Church style. If you are comfortable standing, if you're able to stand, please do. If not, sing where you are, as you are, and let us lift our voices together in this hymn. Great is your faithfulness. Moment that we have a chance to hear words of reflection from Achebe's friends and family. You may come as you are so ordered.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just give me a second. Take this off. My name is Lisa, and I am Achebe Powell's niece. Sadly, we are kicking off Women's History Month with the loss of one of our greatest allies. My aunt was a fierce advocate for everyone, for social justice, for racial justice, for everything. After losing my mother, both my paternal and maternal grandmothers, my aunt became my matriarch. She was very comfortable in her skin, and she never had a problem speaking her truth. My aunt definitely made you think. And as her niece, she demanded me to speak my truth. She demanded that I be self-sufficient. She empowered me to believe that I am powerful. And she allowed me to be who I am. She made sure that the things that I thought were worthy in my life are worthy. She allowed me to understand that my thoughts and my dreams were valuable. She set an example for everyone, regardless of their gender or their race or their sexual orientation or their social status. Everyone demanded and deserved respect. And I've become a strong woman of choice because of her guidance, and I will miss her terribly. And today this world feels a little bit emptier without her. My aunt's influence on my life helped me to forge very strong friendships and very solid relationships. And those who know me know that I am a protector. So, a little story about Auntie. My aunt normalized activism, okay? So, getting involved and getting engaged was a requirement in my aunt's household. So my brother and I shared a memory the other day. He had to be about 10 or 11, so I was about 5 or 6, and Auntie drove us down to a train station in Brooklyn, and we're on the corner, and we're waving these flyers in our hands. Ginny Apuzzo for assembly! Now, at that age, we had no idea what we were doing, right? Who we were talking about. And in our minds, all we knew was who could get the most flyers handed out, right? Who was the loudest, you know? So my aunt made things like that fun. She knew what she was doing, because she basically taught me that my voice mattered, and that as young as I was, I could make a change. Because this little person yelling, Ginny Apuzzo for assembly, somebody was gonna take that flyer and somebody was gonna read it and more than likely vote for Ginny Apuzzo. So she taught that to us, that no matter your age or your color or your gender, you can make a change in the world. And that's what we were doing. So she knew what she was doing. And it wasn't until I became an adult that I fully realized exactly what my aunt's stature was in this world. Because like I said, for the longest time, she was the fun aunt. You know, handing out flyers was fun. Celebrating the 25th anniversary of Martin Luther King's March on Washington in Washington was fun. You know, walking hand in hand, holding flyers with other gay and lesbian people, that was fun to us. We had no idea the impact we were helping to make at such a small age. And that was just some of the things that you did with my aunt. And it's only recent that I've come to understand that those experiences have modeled me into the woman that I am. They've shaped the partner that I've become to my husband. And as his wife, I remind him, as a Black man in this America, that you have every right to live and to grow old. They've modeled me into the parent that I've become to my 2 beautiful children, because I teach them daily to learn how to advocate for themselves and to love who they want to love. I remind them not to be mediocre. And I protect them ferociously, because mama's got their back. But my aunt's lessons have also had a profound influence on how I treat myself. When things get out of sorts, I remember that I have a right to be in this place, wherever it may be. I have every right to be here. And wherever I am in the world in that moment, I belong. And even at 52 years old, these lessons are never far away. The untimely passing of my dear aunt has filled me with only sadness. She deserves so much better. I can imagine her just easing into the arms of those who have gone before her. But it's very hard for me to imagine a world without her brilliance and her love. I will forever miss her. but I will always remain warmed by her love. And the woman that I am and who I've become and who I will be are all because of the things that she's given me. I love you, my sweet aunt, and I will see you on the other side. Thank you.
Okay, I thought I could do this, but I'm going to have to read this because this is the first time I'm seeing the ashes. And this picture was taken just a few months ago, and many more things have happened since then together, the holidays together. This is totally unreal to me. So I'm what's called in the mental health world dissociated from my person right now. So I'm operating totally on steam and spirit, so just bear with me. So I'm Linda Fraser, and for the last 4 months, the last 4 years, Achebe and I have been partners, and I've known her long ago, 20-some years ago, but this incarnation, I think thanks to Annie, who's sitting there, we were reunited at Town Hall. Serendipitously, she's coming up the stairs with a lot of pain, hip pain, and she's about to go under the knife at some point. And Linda says, and I haven't seen her in years now, and Annie's standing there, and she's looking at the two of us. And I say, well, do you need any help? I'm the total caregiver. I can, help out. Next thing I know, I get a spreadsheet from Michelle, who's sitting right here. And my slots are carefully filled out. I have like a handful of friends left on the face of the earth, and half of them live in New York. So a spreadsheet of all these people, I'm like, okay. So we reunited, if you can believe this, in a hospital for special surgery. Great place for a first date. Great place. East River flowing by. Doctor coming in to check if she has enough opioids to kill the pain. She's nodding off, and I'm like, wow, I wonder, why it took this long for me to feel this person. Probably because the opioids had slowed her down a bit, so that I could really feel her. Okay. Anyway, let me just try to read this thing that I wrote here. First of all, I need to give thanks to the Most High Mother, Father, Spirit. Forgive me for not saying that to begin with, because this experience with Achebe, Betty Jean Powell, has just been incredible on every level. I mean, everybody here pretty much knows her, so the joy, the fun, and then the pushback and the arguing about everything had to be a discussion and a debate. Achebe, the sky is blue outside. No, well, it's got a bit of, so it was that kind of everything, okay? But we had a beautiful time. It's as if the Creator knew that this was going to happen. Incredible, just an incredible time together. The things we did, the people that I met in her world, just a really wonderful time. It was a real relationship, a full, intense relationship the whole time. And there was a lot of joy. She demanded it. Had to be joy, no matter what was happening. But today, I have to admit that I am heartbroken. just totally heartbroken. And the only reason that I'm even able to breathe is because I don't believe this has happened. I think once it really hits me, I don't know. I'm gonna have to line up a therapist. I know that much. Let me read some of this. So my loss is my loss, but there's also the loss to community, world, country. Talk about not knowing someone. This morning I opened up an email from Anissa, sent out a 10-module Train the Trainers program that she did, summit that she did in Pakistan. And I said, oh, really? So I turn on one of them, and the dissonance of, that's my baby there, and wow, she talk about a trainer. It's not your average trainer, okay? The intensity which she works, and it's coming from her heart, from her gut. She's not just reading from some curriculum. And this was with a group, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it the right way, but this was the first feminist women's organization in Pakistan back in 1974 or 5. I don't know, you can check me, Charlotte, if I'm right about that. And so this was the seed of what is happening now, and I Googled it. It's much expanded. The work that they're doing goes beyond Pakistan, and you know, she did the training. She did the training for this group. This woman was a powerhouse of action and education in all spheres of social justice and human equity, and not just through the organizations and local grassroots groups she worked with, but even as she walked through the street, did her daily walk, talking to people she knew, talking to people she didn't know, talking to people that might not even want to talk to her. She has something to say and share. Her generosity of spirit is just huge. I remember a time during the pandemic, we were, I don't know why we were, but we were in a diner in the village. And we're sitting there eating, and there's a gentleman, a homeless gentleman outside. You can see him through the window. He's having a hard time. There's something going on, and police may be coming. So Achebe jumps up, runs out into the street to help him, and I'm running behind her with the mask. Babe, put the mask on at least, because she's up in his face, okay? And this is who she is and who she was. We met over like 25 years ago, when through a contractual relationship with New York State Office of Mental Health and the now combined City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. I think when the program actually started, we were still a separate Department of Mental Health. But the program still exists now. And she was training mental health case managers for the first time so that they're not treated like paraprofessionals. These people do perform amazing work in the community. Some of them are already in an advanced degree program at Hunter, some not. But the knowledge base that they have and the work they do from day to day is just phenomenal. And it was mandatory. We had restructured the whole program so that everybody would get the same training. And she did the diversity piece. And prior to Achebe being there, you know, we'd have to pull teeth to get these folks to come in and sit down for 2 hours because they had work to do. They wanted to see their clients. Well, once she took over that spot, more people wanted to come. More people signed up for it. And everybody just loved her there. So I can see the correlation between the training that I'm watching her do in Pakistan so many years ago and that same style of delivery is just so effective. And it's so much more than just, Latinx culture or African American culture. I mean, she did the whole gamut of diversity, all of it. Yeah, she was supposed to start work last week. She wasn't even partially retired as 2023 began, okay? And as mainstream America began to take a more serious stab at inclusion and diversity as one answer to the ever-growing madness and bedlam that's going on, she was now thinking about new ways and different approaches for her work, because it's even more needed now than ever. Folks are right. A lot of people, I think the tipping point of being woken up has happened, and she could have taken what she was doing so much farther. So the world is really, this country is really losing a very valuable human being. During the course of our 4-year relationship, she kept going full speed ahead. Nothing stopped her. 2 hip replacements, a stroke, okay? After the first hip replacement, she didn't want to use the cane. And she was fortunate with that one that it healed a little bit quicker than the second one. So she was having difficulty even as she entered the hospital with COVID. So that was going to be an added piece had she survived in terms of her PT and recuperation. And we, Okay. Sorry. Okay. Even after her most heroic battle anyone could imagine taking place in Brooklyn Methodist Hospital's ICU, with friends and staff giving all they could and larger circles of friends and family cheering her on, at the end, still in an induced sleep, they were giving her 2 hours to live. She took 2 days. She took her time so that, and I really believe it was so that she could have everybody who was coming to give her that final love, so that they would be able to do that. COVID had robbed her of her lungs, and the standard medication administered further robbed her of her kidneys. But she left with a heart no less intact than the one she brought with her to Methodist, and a spirit that nothing and no one could diminish. To quote Maya Angelou, "A great soul serves everyone all the time. A great soul never dies. It brings us together again and again." Farewell, my love.
You know, I haven't been able to cry, and I don't want to do it right now, so stay with me. Hello, family, community, and those of you who are online streaming the congregation. I tried to write something, and I just could not focus. Not because there isn't something to say. There's almost too much to say about our beloved Achebe. So I want to start by saying, who would have thunk this would have been my first visit to Middle Collegiate? I would occasionally say to Achebe and Charlotte, "I really want to come to church with you sometime." They said, "Yes, come. They knew I needed the spirituality, clearly. And the closest I got until today was dropping them off a few times or picking them up. So, Achebe, this wasn't quite the way I wanted to make my first visit, but I think I may have to join the congregation in your honor. And I know what she would say to me is, do it for yourself, not for me. I have known Achebe for 40 years. Every time I think about talking about her, I think about this TV series. There are 8 million stories in the naked city, and this is one of them. And actually, the 8 million stories are all Achebe stories and more. I first met Achebe when she and Jewel Gomez interviewed me in the early 80s to go on to the board of the Australia Lesbian Foundation for Justice. Some other former board members are here. They interviewed me, they grilled me, and they brought me on. And we were an all-volunteer organization at that time. And fast forward, I was hired as the director and spent between board and being the director 27 years. And Achebe and I, up until the moment she passed, we were still part of Australia, and Australia was still part of us. Achebe was a founding mother, and this is one of the stories about Achebe is when the group got together, she said, we can't go on until there are women of color at this table besides me. And so they stopped until they organized and brought women of color together. And to this day, the organization is that multiracial organization. In fact, the values, the social justice feminist values, they were at the core of Australia, under the leadership of Achebe, are still true today. That is her legacy. Long before people were talking about diversity and inclusion and intersectionality, she was living it and bringing it to all the organizations that she was part of. I would once in a while say to her, you are responsible for my longest lesbian romance, 40 years of Australia, with Australia. Another piece where she brought me into the fold was women's tennis. So we had the serious but joyful Australia, and then we had women's tennis. And so my first encounter with her and many others, Charlotte and Roxana were there, and there was a whole group of us, was at the Virginia Slims. So that's a whole nother political issue. Women's tennis, smoking, Virginia Slims. No. And then on to the US Open, where we would either be there in person, a group of us, or watch at Charlotte and Roxas. But if I was sitting next to Achebe during the US Open, when you're not supposed to be talking, and distracting any of the play, she would be mouthing to me about what they should have done and what happened and what happened. And I'd be like, shh, shh, talk to me at the break. And I always loved the story that she told that when she was one of those army brats living in Germany, who she retrieved balls for was the great Althea Gibson. I just love that story that our Achebe was there getting balls for Althea. I think one of the ways we keep Achebe's legacy alive is by telling stories. There are so many stories. In these last grueling weeks, and they were heartbreaking and grueling, I learned so much more. You know somebody for 40 years, and there's so much more to know about them and who they are and who the people that loved them and impacted. I've met new friends. Sandra, Achebe's adopted goddaughter, but so many others, and so many friends here, the long-standing relationships. But I've learned so much about her, and we can never know everything about anyone. when we talk about the stories, I also want to appreciate our community who stepped up. We wanted to get the word out to the community about Achebe's passing, but also who she was. And I think he's here, Richard Burns. Hey, Richard. Richard was our go-to guy, and he organized different communities, organizations, the Center, Estrella, the task force, all these groups, they immediately, and there's so many stories out there now about Achebe that would never have gone out there without this community. They just automatically did this. And in the many organizations, and there's many here, I'm not going to start naming all of them, where they put tributes on their websites in the Facebook and on Facebook. Real Circle, where we honored Achebe a number of years back with the Regina Shaver's Legacy Award. She was given a time limit. I tried to, I told her less time than she really had, and of course she did not listen to me. And I was trying to stop, all right, time. And then I looked at the crowd, and it was like, no, don't stop. She had them memorized. And so it was like a keynote. It became a keynote, really. And but the standing ovation at that time. So it's like you couldn't shut her up. And she, the other thing I would say about her is one of the last times when she was in the hospital before she got intubated, I had the opportunity, was given the permission to come to the hospital. And she had the oxygen mask, and we were exchanging words, and even though she wasn't supposed to be talking, but she did talk. And I brought some messages to her, and I said, I'll come back tomorrow. And she said, no, don't come back. I need to, I'm going to focus. I'm breathing. I've got to do this on my own. And I said, okay, rest. We breathed together, and I said, rest. I'll be back on Thursday. And that night, I got a text. This is about her directives, her bossiness, and I mean it in the best sense of the word too, because she was bossy and directive, but also within a lot of love and caring and compassion. And so certainly, I got a directive that night and instructions of what to do and not to do, but in the most loving and caring way you can imagine. A little bit about her bossiness. That bossiness is about leadership, right? And when I said it was always in the context of caring. I want to say one more thing. She was, for me, a moral compass on a political level and on a personal level. Because I know that I could go to her and tell her what was on my mind and what I was struggling with, and she would listen. Now, she was an opinionated woman, but she could listen and understand and reflect back. And that's just what she did, and helped me out of several difficult predicaments, and to make me feel good about myself and about others that I was struggling with. So I have this hanging in my apartment. It's from a yoga master guru. And it says, those who live passionately teach us to love. Those who love passionately teach us to live. I feel so blessed, as I imagine all of you do, that Achebe gave us many gifts on how to both live and to love passionately. Thank you. Thank you.
As you come. I just want to say these things. One, I do not want to stop anybody from talking. That is just not what I want to do. I just want to make room and space and hear all the stories. However, Lisa did assign me to be, the person who says that's enough. Yeah.
Okay.
So Linda, your words were gorgeous. I'm going to come up and hug you while this lovely gentleman is talking. We just want to help everybody say what they have to say. So be thinking about 3 minutes. I've been giving everybody so far 8. So just see how generous we are being, okay? But just so that everybody can do it and so that we can all, okay?
I time my around
All right.
4.
What is your name? What is your name, my love?
Mitchell.
Thank you, Mitchell. Okay.
So my name is Mitchell Karp, and I'm here to provide some gender diversity. Achebe and I were friends for over 40 years. Everybody loved Achebe, and each of us felt that we had a special relationship with her because she made each person she interacted with feel special. Whether that was at a workshop, at a conference, over coffee, or from what I've been told on the dance floor. That was one of her many gifts, her ability to connect with people, to reach out across identity, politics, or generation, and form an authentic and rich human connection. She led with her heart, wowed you with her intellect, instructed you with her astute political analysis, and charmed you with her warmth, her easy laugh, and her ability to see what was possible and encourage you to be your best self. Achebe had her quirks. When we went out to dinner, I had to prepare myself to change tables once or twice until she found the one that felt right, and to also watch her interrogate the wait person to make sure that the wine was just the right wine and the dish was exactly what she wanted. And she left some of the longest voicemail messages I have ever received. She'd call and tell me where she was, why she was calling, what she was thinking about, and then proceed to verbalize her thought process while assuring me she was trying to keep her message brief. I loved her and still love her with a deep respect and affection that now feels like a hole in my heart and my life. Our 40-plus year friendship began when Achebe came to what was then Black and White Men Together to talk about Black-Jewish relations. I was immediately impressed, and we began a conversation that lasted until she died. She introduced me to the Equity Institute and encouraged me to go through their Diversity Anti-Oppression Train the Trainer program. When Achebe had a contract to do diversity work at Gay Men's Health Crisis, and her partner on the project, Ken Dawson, who was the founder of SAGE, was too sick with AIDS to continue, a few people suggested I step in for Ken. I did. I took a 6-month leave of absence from my job as an attorney at the Human Rights Commission, and Achebe and I discovered we had complementary skills and a wonderful chemistry in both designing and delivering the work. There were times when I worked on her projects and times when she worked on mine. Early in my career, when we were delivering a series of workshops at St. Vincent's Hospital, my mother, who lived in Manhattan, kept asking to sit in on one of the workshops. I finally relented. At the end of the workshop, my mom said, you were really good, but that Betty, wow, she's fantastic. Our friendship went well beyond work. With Achebe, I felt a shared intellectual curiosity and a voracious appetite to experience all that life has to offer, gastronomically, culturally, and visually. We would share our experiences and our escapades. She had an unwavering commitment to see and support my fundamental goodness, and I endeavored to extend the same to her. That support allowed us to share our insecurities without fear of judgment, our individual anguish over political setbacks and horrific assaults on people's rights and human dignity, and the challenges we each faced in our romantic relationships. I miss her smile and her easy laughter. I miss her counsel and her insights. I miss her passion and her resilience. and I miss being able to chat with her about anything and everything whenever either of us needed to. After she died, when I searched for the password to access her iPhone, I was repeatedly unsuccessful. And then I noticed the word espoir appeared in some of her other passwords. When I tried it, her iPhone unlocked. When I Googled it, espoir turns out to be French for hope. Achebe always held out hope for a better world, a better self for herself, and a better self for each of us. I will carry her legacy of hope with me as I continue to grieve her absence from my life.
At Middle Church, we say Ashe, Amen. We snap our fingers, we clap. You can give expressions of welcome and love.
Hi, my name's Michelle Billies. So grateful to be here with all of you. I have known Achebe for a little over 30 years. I can't believe she picked me. She picked me twice about the same amount at the same time in the late 90s. I was starting to do anti-racism as a white person, and she asked me to speak as part of her panel at Creating Change with Serena Khan, which was an incredible moment for me. And at Creating Change, we happened to be in line for lunch. And she said, hey, do you want to get lunch together? And I was like, right? And my jaw hasn't stopped dropping since. Green is my favorite color. It always has represented life to me. Last fall, I fell in love with Pat Westerford, one of the lifelike characters in Richard Powell's novel, The Overstory. She's based on Dr. Suzanne Simard, a real-life forest ecologist whose work on the communication among trees was dismissed for decades. Simard came to understand what indigenous peoples have always known, that trees care for each other. They warn each other if insects or giraffes are coming. They send water through their roots to help trees uphill and rush their carbon out to others when they die. And they nurture their young. Simard calls these trees mother trees. The enormous centers of intergenerational forest networks. Mother trees withstand fire and drought and lightning. They send nutrients and water through their roots to their seedling descendants, while protecting them from harsh and drying sun with their shade. Simard studied the irreducible, infinite whole of forests that sustain themselves with all the processes of redistribution and care they enact. Mother trees anchor the forest and rejuvenate the smaller life around them. Achebe was a mother tree. She thrived in the forest of us, delighting in our flowers, charmed by our music, holding every being up to the light. She bent and swayed with the storms that damaged the communities she loved. She stood stalwart and determined in the face of injuries to herself. She nurtured many a tree in her scope. One of the vital nutrients Achebe fed me was a belief in me. It is a beautiful gift for someone who emulates who you want to be in the world, who holds values you aspire to see that in you and to believe in you. I suspect many people have felt this way in her presence. She wasn't stingy with her gaze or her celebration. It is such a gift not to hold back, not to give a partial yes, but to affirm what is right and good in you. Critique was part of the love, and I don't know if trees critique each other, but she had her opinions, she had her correctives. She would assert a different way of thinking or analyzing a situation or an action I took or thought to take. I didn't need to be perfect. I needed to be me, striving for something better, using my time to cherish others, to love Black people, to love all people, to love women with a wink, to love queer people, to have faith in them. My ability to love people and communities has everything to do with the communities Achebe nurtured and held to a higher standard. The LGBTQ communities of the late 90s that schooled and held me were intertwined with the feminist and Black power movements that made my coming out into a life practice of anti-racism possible. I don't know if trees feel history. Maybe they just are history. But I feel that history buoying me, that effort and vision Achebe carried wherever she went. Another vital nutrient she fed me was the importance of context. And as we've described, boy, could she talk. She could tell story after story, and while that story directly relates to this other important story, here's another piece you have to know, which she actually doesn't articulate. It's just more obvious from the flash in her eyes and the passion of her voice. She could hold court, and certainly held my attention for hours. I used to think that I was just an introvert. Yet, among so many other lessons I learned from her, that the context matters, and I tell more involved stories now. The history, the details, the ideas and feelings, the purpose. She obviously had a wickedly acute memory and an inner drive to testify and storytell, but her passion was also driven by an urgency that was her life force. Her utter assurance of her life's work to bolster the forces for good and make a new world by asserting it. Simard also found that when trees die, they send their sugar and minerals down from their branches and out through their trunk and roots, rushing any good stuff they can to the trees around them. Dead trees can take hundreds of years to decompose, all the while making life possible for innumerable microbes and insects, fungi and lichen, rodents and lizards, leafy plants and seedlings, foxholes for kits, buffets for birds, and loam for whatever new creations the forest dreams up each day. We are so many mother trees and second-generation trees and saplings and seedlings in the forest of where she now lays. She's still present with us, her grandeur in green, nurturing flowers and sheltering creatures, releasing her nutrients to those of us around her as she always did, offering us a place of rest and regeneration, throwing herself into life with every cell of her body, every gesture and expression, with each unfolding of her life process. At least this is the image I am carrying forward as I hold on to her in memory and in spirit.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Bunch, and I got to be last because I claim to have known her the longest. I have to compete with Lisa, who's known her all her life, but I've known her for 50 years, almost 50 years next year. And Achebe has been so central to the lessons and pleasures in my life. I consider her one of my core family members. And I think many of you also are in that family of Achebe that keeps discovering more and more people, as I think Mitchell said, who feel that she was very special to each of us and all of us. I cannot imagine going on without her. I was 30 years old when I met her. I was struggling to get out of a lesbian, feminist, separatist place. And she was exactly the kind of person to help you come from the insights of that to back to the big picture. We met at the Gay Academic Union at a conference in 1974 where she was the chair, this brilliant African-American lesbian French teacher, and, you know, always stately. And I will never forget, first of all, that she chaired this panel at the height of the kind of divisiveness of the movements of the 70s, as only a person who loved people but also knew how to be a good school teacher could. And at one point, there was a young man disrupting the conference, sort of as people did in that time, and she said, "Young man, please sit down." And he was so startled he did. And I think you know, I tell the story because I think it epitomized something about Achebe that many of us want to speak about, which is her ability to reach someone with dignity and respect and to be able to help them see where they need to move, even if they don't know it. And to be able to do it, I always call her the most dignified, respectful person who could listen to everybody, but also still be a no-nonsense woman who knew what needed to be done and could do it and could make you go with her, even when you disagreed with her, because of that kind of combination of love and presence. And sometimes, I think you said it, Linda, it took a long time to get there. You know, I always made certain when I was going to have a phone call with Achebe that I didn't have something on the stove cooking or something I needed to do, you know, that was going to interrupt the conversation because you knew it wasn't going to be 5 minutes. I can't think of any phone call I had that was 5 minutes. And I think that's the kind of way that she drew so many of us in. To her heart and to her mind and to her being. My opportunity to get to know her better was the National Gay Task Force Board of Directors in the 70s, where she became the co-chair because we were part of the affirmative action to make the board half women, because the original founding group was certainly over 2/3 men. So she and I both came on the board in the affirmative action moment, and she became the co-chair rapidly. And she would come to my house for lunch or invite me to lunch. I didn't live in New York at that time, to work on the agenda. Now, any of you who co-facilitated with Achebe know that an agenda for Achebe is a 5-hour process. It's down to the very bottom line of what's going to happen. And I didn't think that was necessary, but I was into being with her, so whatever the agenda was, that was a great way to get to know Achebe. And we worked there. We helped found the Women's Caucus of NGTF and did lesbian visibility, and I worked with her on one of the, I think, great unknown achievements of getting sexual preference on the agenda of the National Women's Conference in 1977, which really sealed the linkage of the feminist movement to the LGBT movement, and I think still is a very important part of what frightened the right wing and they reacted to, and it was a really high point. There's a picture of her on the cover of Lesbian Tide speaking at that conference in your booklet. It was an incredible way to get to know somebody both politically, personally, and in all those dimensions. But she was also very warm and welcoming. When Nancy Myron, who's here with me, part of that family, and I moved from Washington to New York in 1979, she brought us fried chicken that she actually made. Now, I didn't know yet that Achebe doesn't cook. I learned that very soon after that, and I've shared many a meal with her in a restaurant or where my partner Roxana or other people cooked, but but somehow she knew, coming from New York, from DC to New York in that moment, we needed a personal welcome. And so she made fried chicken. And I think that was her uncanny way of knowing what's needed in each moment. What does this person need? What can you do to fit that need, even if it isn't what you normally think of yourself doing? I could go on with many stories. After all, 50 years is a lot of life. But I want to come to the expansion of our family. As I started to do international global feminist work in the 80s, I was determined to bring Achebe along, and I want to say I introduced her to the women in Pakistan that led to those workshops, so I consider that a part of our life and our legacy. I convinced her to go in 1983 with me to the Feminist Encuentro in Peru, which was the second gathering of feminists in the continent, a fabulous place. Neither of us spoke very good Spanish. I had limited Spanish from my childhood schools, and somehow I thought the fact that she was fluent in French would be helpful. But we managed. We got there. We stayed with Roxana, who we had met before at a conference. For those who don't know, Roxana Carrillo is my lifetime partner now. And Achebe knew that something was happening, so she helped us be together, and then she left. And she knew when to leave. She knew when to leave you on your own, and I think that was also one of her gifts. She knew how to be with you, but she also knew whether it was for a relationship in this case, or just for you to grow, when she needed to leave and you needed to take the action yourself. There was another of her gifts, that sense of the timing of what to do when. Roxana and I have been together now almost 40 years, and I consider Achebe one of the key people to helping us build our relationship and becoming a family with me and Nancy and many of you. And the extraordinary community of women who are, many of whom are here today and who have been family with all of us, sharing those tennis moments, whether in our home or in the US Open, sharing Christmases, sharing concerts, sharing Thanksgivings with Brother David's sweet potato pies, which were the best sweet potato pies I ever ate in my life. Thank you, Lisa, for your father's touch, and Dana. Always full of love and animated political conversation. Animated, debated, endlessly, I think someone said it, I want to repeat, agonized every time there was something terrible in the country or the world that she cared about. She was in agony. You could feel that she took that pain into her soul. And having political conversations wasn't just about what's the right line or the right strategy. It was about what is our responsibility as caring people in the world. It wasn't somebody else's. It was ours to deal with that agony. And because of that, she was also always a seeker. She had a voracious appetite for knowledge, for connection, for art, for music, for culture, and she took us through a deep dive in all of those areas, not the least of which was her politics. I think someone mentioned it, I just want to repeat that she was intersectionality before we had the term. Her life as an African-American lesbian who loved the French language and a lot of European culture was complex and sometimes painful because many people in those different worlds didn't allow for those other sides of her being and were challenging to her for those things she was and cared about. But she knew from that experience, and she brought that into all of her trainings. She knew there wasn't any one way to be or to see the world, and that only by listening, deeply, carefully to the pain, the experience, and the insights of all those different intersections could we find the possible solutions for the future. I think it's one of her enormous contributions that made all her trainings so wonderful. Everyone could see that she took seriously wherever you came from. And if you needed to move, she wasn't hesitant to suggest that you move, but in a way that took you seriously as you were and helped you to take the next step. Maybe that's why there's thousands of people who can testify to how one of her trainings, whether it was in a local school in Brooklyn where she worked on dialogues between the police and youth, black youth and the police, or it was at one of our global feminist workshops where she came every year to the Center for Women's Global Leadership. And unlike most Americans, she could talk about the work she did on diversity and intersection in this country and connect to people who experienced similar issues, but in different ways. And I think the Pakistan modules are a really wonderful exhibit of that. I could go on and on, but I can tell that my time is definitely over. I'm getting very gentle vibes over here. So let me just say that we all know that one of the things we love about Achebe is that she also called upon us to find our better selves, to be the best selves that we could be, not by haranguing us or making us feel bad, but by calling us in. I think Loretta Ross has said, it's about calling us in to the struggles we belong to, and that's what I think she knew and did so instinctively. So the many adventures and joint projects that we did together over 50 years includes coming to Middle Church. We had long discussions about what was our spirituality and where could we go. And she had a wonderful church with you, Carol, in California that she loved, but we didn't have that same. And we explored, it was many, many things, including the Gervais Choir performing at one of Claire Koss's events that led us to come to Middle. And we came together. She was much more ready to jump in. I was kind of the shy one, living behind my excuse of a busy life. But it was this embracing community of love, period, that she loved and that she felt made such an important home for her in this life of seeking many things. So to all of you, to all of these different worlds that she's been a part of, I would like to raise an apple martini to thank Achebe for being in our lives, to offer gratitude for the deep friendship that has enriched me, and I know most of you, and expanded our horizons. We will miss you deeply, but we know you will always be in and with us. Achebe.
Thank you, wonderful, Charlotte. Thank you. Friends, this is the eulogy. The word eulogy literally means to give thanks for in the Greek. So we're so excited to give thanks for Achebe. And I want to invite my colleague, my friend, Amanda Hambrick-Ashcraft. Reverend Ashcraft has been co-pastoring Achebe with our whole team of clergy for a long time, but especially in these last few years, a real special relationship. So I invite her to eulogize as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. It's been an honor to be one of Achebe's pastors. When I heard we were wearing white, I knew exactly what dress I would wear. I got this at an auction for the New York Abortion Access Fund and thought that Achebe would appreciate that. However, writing a eulogy for her is something that you never want to do. The words from the Gospel of John read by Ben haunt me a bit. Do not let your hearts be troubled, because I am troubled, if I'm quite honest with you, and my heart actually hurts. I, along with many of you, as you have said, am in deep grief about her passing from this side. We sit in that sad and lonely place together. Our grief will ebb and flow, and wherever you do find yourself on that spectrum today, it is more than okay, as Jackie said at the very beginning and has been echoed here. My grief today is also anchored in strength because of who Achebe was, because of who our Creator is. To know Achebe was to know the palpable possibility of freedom. Working, believing until her last day that each of us may be free. Setting up a Zoom to coach me on how I might get involved in helping teach the 1619 Project while in physical therapy for her hip. Hearing a sermon I did on abortion and saying, hey, let's scaffold your talking points, painstakingly going through them so that I could be a better workshop facilitator. Sending pictures of many of you all, of loved ones at weddings and celebrations, and asking to see important pictures of people in our lives. I saw all your wedding pictures. Congratulations. That, friends, is the palpable possibility of freedom through each of us. Achebe also had the gift of seeing, really seeing us, didn't she? I had the insurmountable task of preaching the Sunday after the insurrection. Wildly inadequate was my feeling. Immediately after I finished, my phone pinged. We were totally remote at the time, and of course, it was Achebe. Thank you, Amanda, she said, and more, as has also been echoed. She, who was no stranger to the dangers of what an insurrection has been, the dangers of white Christian nationalism and the violence of that day. To be seen by Achebe in the fullness of who I am, a straight white woman, in that moment was life-altering. May each of us be seen by someone like Achebe and know that the divine loving spirit, as she would say, sees us all and lives on in all of us, her beloved family and friends. It was Achebe who called me first after we lost a mutual friend. I was fresh in tears. I didn't want to speak to anyone, but I took her call. I am grateful our hearts could touch, she said. When I don't know what to say, I found myself going back to that phrase. I am grateful our hearts could touch. When the struggle seems insurmountable, I'm grateful our hearts could touch. When the pain is too fresh, I'm grateful our hearts could touch. When the death is just downright unfair, I'm grateful our hearts can touch. In her final days, she described her condition as a long healing journey. And friends, it dawned on me that maybe Achebe wasn't only talking about her physical health. She, so close to the heart of the divine loving spirit, calls us all to the long healing journey of life for ourselves, but also for a world that has so much healing to do. One of the last texts I got from her reads, "The healing is definitely happening. It's ever challenging, but I'm ever ready as I know and feel the divine loving spirit is truly holding my hand and guiding my feet while I run this race. And the beat of life goes on, even in sickness. All my love, Auntie." Auntie, all of our love. We are so grateful our hearts could touch. We've got it from here. Rest well, beloved. Ashe and amen.
We're pastors. We do birth, we do baptism, we do weddings, we do communion. We preside when we've lost people we love, and we lose people, and we love the people we lose. It's been so difficult to actually believe Achebe is not here. I just have to say, denial is sometimes a friend. So it's been wonderful to be with you in the real place of grief, so that my heart could just go ahead and crack wide open at the loss of this incredible auntie, beautiful friend, mentor, coach. She was my coach. She kicked my behind a couple of times in the most beautiful way. Is that what you really want to do? Does that make sense? And she'd pepper the coachings with some French. Perhaps the hardest thing she was going to tell you, she'd say in French, and I'd be like, what is that exactly? Oh, I could tell by the tone, though. I had some really beautiful times with Achebe over these years, but also some powerful emails with Achebe. And my email is the Antichrist. It is so full and chock full, partly because I don't delete things. I'm so glad for that terrible habit. So 2014 email from Achebe, I still have. Where I'm on vacation, it's August 1, and she writes and she says, "You're gone, but these notes make us know you're still here. Thanks for holding us even while you're away resting. Play, my love," she writes. 2022, February 9th, she has been in Pray to Rise with Ben. We hold Pray to Rise together. And he did a beautiful exposition of a text that day, and she wrote him, but copied me. I didn't know how much I needed that beautiful interpretation of the text. And then she thanked me for being brilliant enough for hiring such an amazing staff. Yes, I get to take credit for them. In July of 2022, she writes a beautiful note to me thanking me and Natalie for worship. In January of 23, she writes a note saying, "I did it once again because I found Mira." In November, after we've invited her to be on our speaking roster for the Revolutionary Love Conference, now Freedom Rising Conference, she writes, "My dear Rev J, first of all, booyah! And blessed be for 16 years of revolutionary love. Thanks much to the Middle Project and to you and John for birthing it, and to all of those who now carry the torch onward to April 23, how she cheered us on. And yes, of course, I'd be honored and blessed indeed to join you and the beloved community at next year's conference. I look forward to preparing for wrestling and dancing with the politics of Ubuntu. We'll be on the lookout for follow-up. Blessings and so much love, Achebe. P.S. We prayed Wednesday morning for your father's life journey and well-being in these times. Ashe. When I saw her in the hospital, no emails, but between breaths, Rev Jackie, I'm kicking its butt. I'm going to kick COVID's butt. I think though we lost her, she did. She left it in the hospital room. She left its power to claim her joy behind. And she ascended to the ancestors. She ascended to the realm of love. She ascended outside of a body ravaged by disease into the everywhereness, excuse me, where she belongs. I'm a Lion King freak, and my favorite song in that is the song where Simba sings, "He lives in me." As a person sort of challenged to preach the gospel sometimes, resurrection is a weird thing, but here's what it means. Achebe is in you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and me. Thanks be to God. Amen.
It's so good to be in Achebe's spiritual home. We're from California, and I dragged her to my church home in Berkeley, California, many times, and then she would come and say, when are we going? And finally I said, when are you going to have your own spiritual home in New York? And she was looking and looking, and finally I said, I think you found it. She described this community. So it's just so much of an honor to be here in her home. And this is Leonie Walker, and I'm Carol Johnson. And we are part of I'm going to call it a sisterhood that some of you may have heard about. How many of you heard about the Troika? Anybody? Okay. So we've been together. It's an intentional sisterhood that we formed about 33 years ago. See, she knows exactly. And it was an intentional commitment to each other to explore classism, racism, sexism, but especially the classism part and the racism part. And we dove into that terrified, at least I was.
Me too.
Yeah, and Achebe was also.
Yeah.
But we've stuck together, and this next week would have been our 65th Troika.
66.
66, see? Okay. And what that consisted of was going away together to the ocean, usually for 2 or 3 or 4 days, and talking about these issues personally in our lives and in our sisterhood. So in 1991, this one was marrying her wife and her partner, and she asked Achebe to select a poem to read at their wedding. And Achebe and I was supposed to drive her to the wedding. I was there, and I always get lost. I don't have a very good sense of direction. And Achebe was scheduled to read this very important poem, and we just made it by, like, within seconds probably, or minutes of the time she was supposed to read it. And she read it, and I'm going to read part of it now. It's an Audre Lorde poem that she selected. And, you know, Audre's poetry to me is rough, so we picked and chose this, but it's very important that Audre Lorde's voice and presence is here today. Mm-hmm. For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing upon the constant edges of decision, crucial and alone, for those of us who cannot indulge the passing dreams of choice, who love in doorways coming and going, in the hours between dawns, looking inward and outward, at once before and after, seeking a now that can breed futures. And when we speak, we are afraid. Our words will not be heard, nor welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive.
Thank you. So the only white item that I have in my closet is the suit I wore on that day in 1991. I didn't wear this shirt or this tie, but it gives me great pleasure and a feeling of warmth to be able to wear this. And also one of the one of the things that Achebe demanded of us in the Troika was that we bring a nice outfit for at least one evening. And so I know she'd be particularly pleased at the beauty in this room and that we actually dressed up. So she shared a lot with us on Troikas, and I came to appreciate poetry in a way that I never would have without her insistence on sharing poetry with us constantly. She was passionate about poetry. And in 2017, I received a note from her that was sitting on my desk even now in 2023 on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. She had something she was sending me, and so she just grabbed what was nearby. She'd just come from a training, a youth leadership training, and it was a poem. And she said, "This is one of my favorite poems in all of the world." It's called Pray for Peace by Ellen Bass. And again, it's very long, so I have selected a good long portion of it. And I think she'd be really happy to have you all absorb this through me. Pray for peace. Pray to whomever you kneel down to, Jesus nailed to his wooden or plastic cross, his suffering face bent to kiss you, Buddha still under the bow tree in scorching heat, Adonai, Allah. Raise your arms to Mary that she may lay her palms on your brows, to Shekinah, Queen of heaven and earth, to Inanna in her stripped descent. Then pray to the bus driver who takes you to work. On the bus, pray for everyone riding that bus, for everyone riding buses all over the world. Drop some silver and pray. Waiting in line for the movies, for the ATM, for your latte and croissant, offer your plea. Make your eating and drinking a supplication. Make your slicing of carrots a holy act, each translucent layer of the onion a deeper prayer. To hawk or wolf or the great whale, pray. Bow down to terriers and shepherds and Siamese cats, fields of artichokes and elegant strawberries. If you're hungry, pray. If you're tired, pray to Gandhi and Dorothy Day, Shakespeare, Sappho, Sojourner Truth. When you walk to your car, to the mailbox, to the video store, let each step be a prayer that we all keep our legs, that we do not blow off anyone else's legs or crush their skulls. And if you are riding on a bicycle or a skateboard, in a wheelchair, each revolution of the wheels, a prayer as the earth revolves. Less harm, less harm, less harm. With each breath in, take in the faith of those who have believed when belief seemed foolish, who persevered. With each breath out, cherish.
Good afternoon. My name is David Foster, and I'm Achebe Powell's nephew. My father, Auntie's brother, used to always say that nothing happens in God's plan without design. But I have to admit that I'm having a real tough time understanding this one. Maybe there's some protest or uprising outside the pearly gates that needs an organizer, someone to get folks on the same page and move them forward. Perhaps there's some inequity happening up in heaven. You know, suddenly the angels with wings are shunning the angels without, and there's a need for an advocate to represent the underserved or the discriminated against. Or it could be that God just wanted a conversation partner, some loquacious someone who could speak eloquently on all things artistic, cultural, societal, and historic, but with a sprinkle of humor and an infectious giggle. Whatever the reason, he called my auntie home, to his kingdom, to be beside the others that left before her. And like many of you here in the audience today, I was not ready to say goodbye, and I'm still not. A lot of this life I've been able to create is due in large part to my Aunt Achebe. She made investments in my sister and me beginning when we were very young. She crafted experiences that challenged our intellect, that fueled our curiosity and nurtured our creativity. She taught us that the world is more than just black and white, that it is vast, that it is alternately terrible and wonderful, that it is something to be treasured and explored. She showed us through her example that love is love is love is love. Please forgive me, Lin-Manuel. And that leading with love enabled you to receive the greatest gifts. And while I share many of these experiences with my sister Lisa, Auntie was intentional about making sure we each had our own special connection with her. We were invited into her orbit together, but also as individuals, and each of us had our own opportunities to wrap ourselves in her spirit and absorb her wisdom. We cherished the chances when we got to spend the weekend with our cool auntie in Brooklyn, in that wonderful brownstone, meeting all of her friends, eating raw vegetables for snacks, and listening to public radio and classical music. She took us to plays, to museums, to see Alvin Ailey when Judith Jamison was still performing. She took us to tennis matches, where during one, I have to admit, I professed my love for Martina Navratilova. I was probably no more than 10 years old, and I told Auntie that I thought she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Now, I knew nothing about what it meant to be gay or lesbian, and Auntie saw no need at the time to burst my bubble. She just smiled at me, and she tapped my leg, and she said, "Oh, Dee Dee. Oh, Dee Dee." That was her nickname for me. She traipsed us all over the city, and we loved it. We absolutely craved it. It was her involvement in my life that led me to Fieldston. When I was in 8th grade, kind of just skating by in public school, she conspired with her good friend B. Kreloff, who I'm sure a lot of you in the audience knew or remember. And along with my father and my stepmother, they wanted me to take the test, the Ethical Culture School's entrance exam, and I got in. And before I knew it, I was immersed in an academic wonderland. 4 years of 5 a.m. alarms to catch a bus and 3 trains from Queens Village to Riverdale led me to Northwestern University and Chicago, where after a very subpar freshman year, for reasons I will not go into here, I found myself back in Brooklyn in Auntie's brownstone. And she ran up one side of me and down the other, angrily reminding me of the investment she'd made, that everyone had made, in helping me succeed. Listen, Auntie was selfless in her giving, but she demanded that you make use of what you gave, or what she gave. You had to activate it, and I hadn't. But to her credit, she didn't wash her hands of me. Instead, she invited me to live with her for the summer, for a little attitude adjustment and recalibration. It's still one of the best summers of my life, and I've never forgotten the grace she extended to her very young, wayward nephew. Later in life, I took great pride in the fact that I had landed in a career that closely mirrored her professional path. While she was facilitating social and racial justice workshops, I was designing and delivering collaborative experiences for companies looking to work better together. And that commonality gave us a lot to talk about, something that we would do as often as we could whenever the spirit moved us to connect. I'd be in an airport waiting for a flight home after an engagement, and I'd call to tell her about the experience. And I still remember the joy in her voice when I told her that I just completed a session at the Sagamore Hotel in Lake George, New York, and it was a place where she had also conducted meetings. And I remember laughing hysterically. I'm sitting at a gate in LaGuardia, and she told me how she was once facilitating a heavily contentious racial justice workshop and got into this real testy exchange with one particularly racist participant, and how during a break she stomped off to the restroom and she was cursing loudly to herself, only to have her co-facilitator come running after her, screaming her name, telling her that she had left her microphone on and that the whole room, including the racist, could hear the stream of foul language that she was muttering. Now, most often I'd catch her running out the door to an engagement, or gathering or show, and we'd promise to pick up where we left off, and we would. We'd jump back into the discussion as if we'd never left it. An ongoing exchange bookmarked by a placeholder that transcended the distance between us. So many conversations started, so many that sadly I'll never be able to complete. At least not in this life, on this earth. There are many reasons why I will miss my auntie, chief among them, she was my barometer. She helped me make sense of this topsy-turvy, often crazy world, and her wealth of experience and knowledge would provide perspective and calm my busy mind. I remember I called her immediately after George Floyd was murdered because as a Black man, I trusted her to help me understand how to move forward without fear and without hate. And I called her while the Capitol riots were unfolding because I knew she'd be able to help me decipher what I was witnessing and what it meant. There's a saying that as you navigate through life, you never forget the face of your father. To me, that means you never forget how you were raised. You hold the morals and tenets instilled in you close, and you let them guide you. While I am David Foster Jr.'s son, I am also Achebe Betty Powell's nephew. And she taught me to never let my chin touch my chest in public. That you hold your head high and you remain proud of who you are and where you came from. And today I pray that she's smiling down on me and all of us as she sits at the right hand of the Father within his glorious kingdom, reunited with lost family and friends, regaling all of them with stories and laughter. And I pray that she's proud of this life I fashioned using the gifts that she gave me. I said I wasn't ready to say goodbye, so I won't. I will say au revoir. Until we meet again, my darling.
Beloveds, I want to invite you to just receive these words I'm about to read from 2 Timothy, and may they wash over you and bring you hope. But I want you to keep your head no matter what happens. Don't give up when times are hard. Work to spread the good news. Do everything God has given you to do. I'm already being poured out like a drink offering. The time when I will leave is near. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is a crown waiting for me. It is given to those who are right with God. The Lord who judges fairly will give it to me on the day she returns. She will not give it only to me. She will also give it to all those who are longing for her to return. The word of God for the people of God.
They have the courage where we to run against the storm.
Struggling myself don't mean a whole lot. I've come to realize that teaching others to stand up and fight is the only way my struggle survives. I'm a woman who speaks in a voice, and I must be heard. Sometimes I can be quite difficult.
I bow to no man's word. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. One more time. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tina, Sandra, Dion. Thank you. Friends, Middle Church family invites you to take some time as you leave this sanctuary to go downstairs to the social hall. There's elevators and there's stairs to get you there, but a chance to talk with each other and tell stories about Achebe and have some food and drink, coffee, soda. Just so you're clear. We'd love for you to do that. I know Auntie liked red wine and stuff, but we don't have any. Just a blessing to us in this place who come from many different religious traditions that I believe our Auntie Achebe believed most profoundly in the power of love to change the world. So in the name of the love that never leaves us, in the name of the love that created Achebe, Betty Jean Powell, in the name of the love that has bound your lives together in friendship over time, in the name of the love that courses between Linda and her sweet, sweet partner, and Lisa and her amazing aunt. In the name of love that is in this space and all around us, calling us to do more love, I offer you this benediction, that you can smell Achebe, that you can hear her laughter, that you can feel her unwavering and generous gaze, that her many, many beautiful words will comfort you, and her love will be as close as air, as is God's. Amen. Please let the family go first downstairs. Know how much we love you and are so grateful to be with you. So Lisa and Linda, if you will lead folks out, our wonderful usher will help you, and we will all meet you downstairs for some time of fellowship. Thank you. God bless and keep you.